when my paternal grandmother passed away. At the wake, a strange man was seated at the table where relatives were sitting. Relatives on my father's side of the family had the custom of getting together every year, but I had never seen the man. I quietly asked my mother, "Who is that man?" To which she replied that he was my father's brother. I was in elementary school at the time, so I did not know much about it, but my father's older brother, hereafter referred to as my uncle, had been disowned because he had taken on a large amount of gambling debts in the past and caused a lot of trouble for his parents' family. However, he had been contacted about his own mother's funeral, so he showed up. He also brought his wife, who seemed like a normal lady, but my uncle had a gloomy atmosphere, and I thought to myself as a child that he was a bit creepy. And so the funeral proceeded, and after my grandmother's body was cremated. As all the relatives were picking up the bones with chopsticks and handing them to each other, I was scurrying around aimlessly, a sight unfamiliar to me as an elementary school student, when I suddenly caught sight of my uncle. Then, to my surprise, my uncle was eating my grandmother's bones. Apparently, he didn't want others to see him either, so he was devouring the bones, mindful of his surroundings. My uncle seemed to be grinning heartily as he mugged his mouth, and I was truly horrified. I was in elementary school and I was like, I ate a bone. I was shocked and really scared, but I felt like I shouldn't tell my parents, so I didn't tell anyone about this for more than 10 years. However, when I entered the university, I made a friend who was knowledgeable about folklore, and I suddenly remembered this fact and told him about it. "There is such a custom in the Kyushu area," he replied, as if to say that it was not such a terrible thing. My father's family is from the Chubu region, but upon closer inspection, it seems that such a custom of chewing and eating bones exists not only in Kyushu, but also in other parts of Japan. It is meant to be done out of a sense of mourning and cherishing the deceased, or out of a desire to honor the deceased's life force and abilities. Perhaps my uncle ate the bones in order to maintain a connection with his family or mother, who had been cut off from him. But even if that act is a thing, the eerie look in my uncle's eyes at that moment is still burned into my eyes and won't leave me. Last month, A and I went surveying in the mountains. When we go to surveying in the mountains, we always try to go with at least 3 people, but the guy who was supposed to be there came down with the flu, and there was no one else available, so we had no choice but to go with just the 2 of us. But I was still worried, so I asked the local old man who was guiding me around the boundary to help me with the survey. The old man said okay if you give me wages, so the 3 of us went into the mountains. The mountains were white with snow from the day before. But I could see the poles clearly, so the surveying went surprisingly smoothly. It took all morning to measure up to the ridge, and then the old man's cell phone rang. The old man talked for a while, but when he finished his call, he suddenly said he had something to do and was going down. I thought that would be a problem, but he told me that it was just a matter of measuring the boundary of the land along the path, so I thought that would not be a problem, so A and I decided to continue. However, soon after I left the old man, the sky suddenly clouded over and the weather became suspicious. We were talking about how bad it would be if it snowed like this, and A and I picked up the pace to get it over with quickly. By the way, our company uses an instrument called a pocket compass to survey the mountains. A small telescope is attached to the azimuth magnet to determine the azimuth and high-low angle in the direction to which it is pointed. They are lightweight, durable, and easy to handle, making them ideal for mountain surveying. I set my compass horizontally and peered through the telescope toward A, who was standing with a pole. You can see the snow-covered ground and a grove of trees with snow on their branches and leaves, but you can't see the pole or A. I moved the telescope a little and saw the head of the wrong hair, so next I looked for the pole and focused it to read the scale. Huh? Once it came into focus, I noticed something funny. We were surveying with helmets on, but for some reason A had his helmet off and his back turned. And A's hair would have been brown, but what we see now is pitch black. That's weird. When I looked up from the telescope, I saw A standing there with his helmet on, looking at me. But I could see a human figure in a gap in the trees just behind it. I looked through the telescope again and moved it a little. There was a woman. It is standing backward, leaning against a standing tree. She was dressed in white and her black hair covered her shoulders. Why a woman in the snowy mountains? I was horrified and took my eyes off the telescope. Hey. Approached me. As if on cue, the woman disappeared down the slope and into the trees. What are you doing? Hurry up. A's voice brought me back to myself. After reading the compass and filling in the field book, I took a short run to A's side and asked. I just saw a woman standing behind you, did you notice? Give me a break. Even A, who was laughing and saying such things, when he realized I was serious, asked, Is it true? His expression intensified. A and I searched again toward the grove, but all we could see were trees and snow, but no woman. Aren't you supposed to be the guy who's climbing the mountain? No, it didn't look like that. Then I realized. That woman was alone on this snowy mountain with no luggage, and in addition, she was wearing short-sleeved clothes. She said, It's bad, isn't it? Crazy woman. I was quite frightened. I was so freaked out that I couldn't even stand still. While I was doing this, it was getting darker and darker around me, and it was finally snowing. I said, Let's get this over with and go back down the mountain. We're in trouble. We hurriedly resumed our surveying work. The weather worsened over time, becoming more like a blizzard. It was hard to see A holding the pole, and the falling snow made it difficult to find the path. My cell phone was also out of range. I was getting impatient and set up my compass, eager to get off the mountain as soon as possible. Without taking a good level, I looked that way, trying to point the telescope toward A. Then the woman from earlier was standing right behind A. This time she seems to be looking forward, but the blizzard makes it difficult to see well. I stood still, as if unaware. Hey. A doesn't move when I call out to him. Then I saw the woman move. I hurriedly turned the telescope in that direction and peeked in with a jumpy look, and the woman closed her eyes, grabbed the back of A's hair, and put her mouth to his ear from behind. It is as if it is whispering something. I was staring at the ground, not even trying to run away. The woman keeps whispering to such A. I stood there in horror, wincing and shaking. Eventually, the woman left A's side and began to descend the snowy slope. Then, A followed him into the standing timber. Hey, A, what are you doing? Get back here. Get back here now. However, A ignored my voice and went after the woman in the snowstorm. I tossed my surveying tools and followed him, A staggering through the trees. We're in trouble. We're going to get seriously lost. If I didn't do something, I would be in trouble. I really thought so. I was about to explode with the desire to escape. The surroundings are white with a blizzard. Nevertheless, I managed to get close to A. Hey, get a grip. You're going to die. Then A turned around. I looked in the wrong direction with empty eyes. Then he shouted in a language that made no sense at all. My mouth was open as wide as I had ever seen it. My lower jaw was so wide open that it was almost touching my chest. His tongue was hanging out and the edge of his mouth was ripped open and bleeding. I think that was completely off the chin. He was dressed like that, and now he was coming toward me. That was the limit. I threw my surveying tools, and everything else out of my mind and went down the mountain uncontrollably. When I got back to my car, I ran to where I could get cell phone reception and called my company and the police. Eventually a search party entered the mountain and I was interviewed. At first I wondered how to explain about that woman, but eventually I told them what I saw. The police took the statement without hesitation. However, the part about the woman whispering something to A was repeatedly questioned. The next day, one body was found. White summer clothes and black hair. She matched the features of that woman I saw. I was called by the police and made to explain again about the situation at that time. At that time, the police told me many things about the body. The woman's identity was immediately known, he said. It was a woman who had gone missing last summer in a town dozens of miles away. However, he said he did not know why the woman was in that mountain. I was listening, thinking that it didn't matter, because I wanted to forget what had happened. However, there was one thing that bothered me. An examination of the woman's body revealed severe damage to both eyes. I wondered if they had done something like that, but apparently not, because the wound was quite old. The woman's eyes must have been completely blind. The police said so. In the end, A's whereabouts are still unknown. Thinking about my remaining family members, I want A to live, I do, but remembering what happened, honestly, I don't want to see him anymore. When I was in college, one of my friends who I used to hang out with was not very good at scary stories. But even though he was certainly not good at scary things, for some reason he was strangely bossy and enjoyed inviting us to visit haunted places and so on. Well, he's always the only one half crying at the end. Then, in the summer of my junior year, exams were almost over and it was almost summer vacation. I was watching a ghost show on TV to kill time. It was about a psychic performing a seance at a famous haunted house in America or something. I was watching the show thinking it was a common program, but suddenly I had a mischievous thought, couldn't I use this for a surprise? He is a college boy with a lot of free time on his hands. When I call him, he says yes and we decide to do a surprise. The target, of course, is the scaredy cat I just described. He is famous for his good reactions, and I couldn't wait to see how he would react. The plan is as follows. 1. Inviting the scared boy to join you for a seance. 2. Of course, all the members, 5 people including Mr. Scaredy and myself, are gimmicks except for Mr. Scaredy. 3. Rap sound during seance, pop a rubber band and hit the surrounding wall. 4. Then the woman's sobbing, I used my cell phone ringtone. I asked a friend of mine who does theater to do the crying. 5. The spirit is in the seance, the role of the person from whom the spirit descends. This was me. 6. The scared person removes the possessed spirit from the seance. Everyone shouts, you can do it. And shout, you can do it. Finally, the day of the show, I finish preparing ahead of time and call Mr. Scaredy at the designated time. I asked everyone except me and my friend A to return to the house once we had helped them get ready. This was done so that we wouldn't all have to wait for Mr. Scaredy to come home. Scaredy Cat was already in a groove. Don't you guys freak out and run away. Target is alone in his ramblings about things he doesn't understand. It's like the tension is out of control because of the fear. People would say things like, don't be silly, or, look, it's not a game, and create a strange, mysterious atmosphere. In addition, 30 minutes of preparation time is allotted to create an authentic look. The seance began at midnight, amidst an undeniably heightened sense of urgency. The venue for the seance was my friend A's house. I prepared a stack of B5 copy paper, a black sign pen, and a candle. Turn off the lights in the room, place a candle on the table, and sit in a circle around it. On the back of the tabletop, I pasted my friend A's cell phone with a sobbing sound on it. I put a sketchbook and a black sign pen in front of the scene C. The descended spirit would write in it, and I would act it out. The order in which we sat was, me, Scaredy Cat, friend A, friend B, friend C by placing Mr. Scaredy next to me, who uses both hands. Friends A, B, and C can use their free hands to hit rubber bands and operate cell phones. We all join hands under the desk and call out to the spirits with our eyes down. I believe the wording was, your soul here, borrow this person and speak to me. Repeat this with everyone for a while. After a while, he gently removed his hand under the desk. Friends A, B, and C began shooting rubber bands at the wall. To be honest, it was ringing a bit too much. Whenever a sound was made, a scared boy let out an inarticulate scream, such as ah or nu-ah. It was so funny that everyone's shoulders were shaking. However, an accident occurred here. The woman's sobbing voice cannot be heard. I was actually going to take that as my cue to write on the paper like I was obsessed. I knew I wouldn't get anywhere if I didn't, so I didn't wait for the sobbing and ran a sign pen across the paper. Incidentally, we had discussed what we would write, and when everyone opened their eyes during the exorcism phase, they might realize that the words had some meaning, so we wrote spirals that had no meaning or something that looked like letters in a random manner. Then, more accidents occurred. I was throwing the paper away, but the wind resistance made it fly strangely and hit the candle. Someone hurriedly knocked out the fallen candle. Suddenly it is pitch black. There is no other light and I can no longer see what I am writing. Still, I'll write it down as I see fit. The squeak of the sign pen seemed very loud. Hey, turn on the lights, someone shouted. There is a thumping sound and the fluorescent lights in the room glow. And with that, like a broken string, I'm down on the desk. My friend C comes up to me and takes my pulse for some reason. And this guy is possessed by ghosts. To be honest, holding back laughter was the hardest thing I did at this point. Then, as planned, everyone urges the Scaredy Cat to get rid of the spirit. You can do it. You're the only one. You're the only one who can save him. For some reason, the members verbally forced the expulsion of the spirits. I guess people lose their judgment when they are told strongly by those around them when they are panicking. Mr. Scaredy patted me on the shoulder and said, "Who am I? Who am I?" and started to get fired up. The whole group burst into laughter, unable to stand the atmosphere. We laughed and shared our thoughts on the seeds. It was good up to that point. We all froze when I was collecting the papers I scribbled and bounced off. The word, "I want to stay," was written big on the paper. It doesn't matter how much meaningless bludgeoning you do, it could be that it reads just so. But among the dozens of sheets of paper, only that one sheet had bright red text. Also, the phone that had the sobbing voice in it, "Friend A's," didn't have a notification for an incoming call made by friend B. However, the incoming call history showed a record of an incoming call from my friend B. Someone answered the phone.